Welcome, everyone, to Easy History Podcast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into ancient Egypt.
Oh, yeah, ancient Egypt.
We're talking about a civilization that thrived for over 3,000 years.
Wow.
That's longer than some empires we studied today.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it?
So buckle up. Get ready to explore pyramids and pharaohs.
Yeah.
And uncover why this ancient civilization still fascinates us today.
Absolutely. It's amazing to think about just the sheer longevity of ancient Egypt.
It really is.
And you're right, it's not just about the pyramids,
Right.
though they are pretty spectacular.
Of course.
It's about their art, their innovations, their whole way of life.
Yeah.
What we're going to do today is peel back the layers of time and see what made this civilization tick.
Okay, so where do we even begin with a civilization that spanned millennia? It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a vast period.
Mhm.
So let's start by understanding the stage on which this drama unfolded.
Okay.
The Nile River.
Okay.
For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile wasn't just a river. It was the source of life, the backbone of their civilization.
Wow.
Imagine a ribbon of green winding through a vast desert.
Okay.
That was the Nile.
Yeah.
It provided water for crops, a way to transport goods,
Right.
and even a predictable rhythm to their lives with its annual floods.
Oh, interesting.
It was their highway, their supermarket, their calendar, all rolled into one.
Wow, it's like the internet of their time. So without the Nile, there would be no ancient Egypt as we know it.
Exactly. Its rhythm dictated the rhythm of their lives.
Wow.
And this connection to the Nile wasn't just practical, it was deeply spiritual, too.
Okay.
It was tied to their concept of Ma'at, this idea of balance and order that permeated their worldview.
Okay.
The Nile's predictable floods symbolize this balance, this cosmic harmony,
Okay.
and maintaining Ma'at was essential to keeping their society functioning.
So the Nile wasn't just a geographical feature. It was a fundamental part of their beliefs and their identity.
Right.
That makes their civilization even more fascinating. But how do we break down such a long history into bite-sized pieces?
Well, to help us navigate through thousands of years, historians have divided ancient Egyptian history into key periods,
Good.
kind of like chapters in a really, really long book.
Yeah.
This helps us understand the flow of events, the rise and fall of dynasties, and the changes that shaped this civilization.
Okay.
Think of it like a timeline, with each period marking a significant development.
Timeline, time travel.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So where do we begin?
Our first stop takes us back to the pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic periods,
Yeah.
roughly from 5,000 to 2,700 BCE.
5,000 to 2,700 BCE.
Picture this small farming villages scattered along the Nile.
Okay.
Over time, these villages begin to band together,
Okay.
forming larger communities and eventually kingdoms.
Okay.
This is a period of integration, innovation, and ultimately unification.
So this is where we see the seeds of what will become the mighty Egyptian civilization.
Precisely. And this unification under a single ruler, the first pharaoh,
Okay.
is a pivotal moment. It sets the stage for everything that follows.
Right.
The grand dynasties,
Yeah.
the monumental architecture, the cultural achievements that we associate with ancient Egypt.
Speaking of monumental architecture, that brings us to the Old Kingdom, right?
Yeah,
Pyramid time.
you got it. The Old Kingdom, roughly from 2,700 to 2,200 BCE,
Okay.
is when the pharaohs were at the height of their power.
Okay.
And that power is embodied in those incredible pyramids.
Mhm.
But remember, these weren't just tombs.
Right.
They were statements of divine authority, symbols of cosmic order, and testaments to incredible engineering skills.
Imagine being a worker on one of those projects.
I know, right?
Back-breaking work, but also awe-inspiring to be part of something so grand.
Yeah.
I mean, did they have blueprints back then?
Well,
How did they even plan these structures?
it wasn't just brute force.
Okay.
They had skilled architects, mathematicians, and astronomers.
Oh, wow.
In fact, their understanding of astronomy was so advanced
Really?
that the pyramids were aligned with specific stars. And those massive blocks, some weighing tons,
Yeah.
were quarried, transported, and lifted into place using ingenious techniques that we are still trying to fully understand.
It's mind-boggling to think about the logistics involved.
I know.
But even with all this power and achievement, empires have their ups and downs. So what happened after this peak of pyramid building power?
You're right. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
And around 2,200 BCE, we enter what's known as the First Intermediate Period.
the first intermediate period.
Think of it as Egypt's first major political shakeup.
Okay.
Centralized power weakens.
Right.
Pharaohs lose some of their grip.
Okay.
And we see the rise of local governors who start flexing their muscles.
So a bit of decentralization and internal power struggles.
Yeah.
Does this kind of thing happen often in ancient history?
More often than you might think.
Really?
It's a reminder that even the most powerful civilizations
Right.
are vulnerable to internal pressures.
Yeah.
For ancient Egypt, it wasn't a complete collapse. It was more of a readjustment, a time of turmoil that eventually led to a new era.
So Egypt managed to bounce back after this first shakeup.
Exactly what follows is the Middle Kingdom.
Okay, the Middle Kingdom.
From about 2050 to 1750 BCE,
Yeah, okay.
it's a period of rebirth and expansion.
Oh, interesting.
The pharaohs of this period were all about reestablishing order and connecting more with the people.
Okay.
They focused on public works, trade, and literature, almost like they were trying to re-legitimize their authority.
So a bit of a PR campaign after a period of instability.
You could say that it was about projecting stability and strength, reminding everyone why a unified Egypt was a good thing, and they weren't afraid to adapt their style of rule to achieve it.
Oh, interesting.
This period also saw a flourishing of art and literature,
Okay.
reflecting a renewed sense of cultural confidence.
It seems like they learned from their mistakes and came back stronger.
Yeah.
But history does have a tendency to repeat itself, right?
Unfortunately, you're right, and that brings us to the second intermediate period.
Oh, no.
Starting around 1750 BCE,
1750.
this time the challenge comes from outside. A group known as the Hyksos,
The Hyksos.
armed with advanced weaponry like chariots and composite bows,
Wow.
managed to conquer parts of Egypt.
So they brought new military tech to the party.
Yeah,
Did this change the way Egyptians fought wars?
absolutely. The Hyksos' arrival was a wake-up call for the Egyptians.
Okay.
Their superior weaponry and military tactics forced the Egyptians to adapt and innovate. They learned from their enemies,
Okay.
adopted new technologies, and eventually turned the tables.
Wow.
It's a classic example of how external pressure can lead to internal change, even in warfare.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And you know what? The Hyksos invasion wasn't just about military technology.
Oh, really?
It was about cultural exchange, too.
Oh, wow.
The Hyksos brought with them new ideas, new customs, and new artistic influences.
Huh.
This interaction, while initially disruptive, ultimately enriched Egyptian culture, making it even more diverse and dynamic.
That's a fascinating perspective. It's easy to think of invasions as purely destructive, but sometimes they can lead to unexpected cultural fusion.
Exactly, and this fusion is very evident in the period that follows.
Yeah.
The New Kingdom, which lasted from about 1550 to 1070 BCE,
1550 to 1070.
this is when Egypt really flexes its muscles on the international stage.
Okay.
They learned the lessons from the Hyksos, refined their military strategies, and became a dominant force in the region.
New kingdom, new attitude. This is when Egypt really becomes a major player in the ancient world, right?
Absolutely. It's an era of military expansion, increased trade, and incredible cultural achievements.
Wow.
And it's also the time of some of the most famous pharaohs we know today, like Hatshepsut,
Oh, yeah.
Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and Ramses II.
Okay, those names are definitely ringing a bell. Let's do a quick roll call of these pharaoh superstars.
Okay, let's start with Hatshepsut.
Okay.
She was a remarkable woman who ruled Egypt for over 20 years.
Wow.
Imagine the audacity it took for a woman to assume the role of pharaoh in a society dominated by men. She was a shrewd politician, a skilled diplomat, and a prolific builder who left behind a legacy of impressive monuments.
So Hatshepsut broke the mold, proving that women could be just as powerful and effective as men. What about Akhenaten?
Akhenaten was a fascinating figure known for his religious reforms.
Yeah.
He tried to shift Egypt from polytheism, the worship of many gods,
Right.
to a monotheistic belief system centered around the sun god, Akhmet.
Wow, monotheism in ancient Egypt. That's a pretty radical move for a civilization known for its pantheon of gods and goddesses.
It was a radical shift, and it didn't last long after his death.
Okay.
But his reign had a profound impact on Egyptian art and culture.
Oh, interesting.
The artistic styles of his time became more naturalistic and expressive, a departure from the rigid symbolic forms of earlier periods.
So his religious revolution also triggered an artistic revolution. What a fascinating connection. Who's next on our list?
Well, you can't talk about the New Kingdom without mentioning Tutankhamun,
Tutankhamun.
better known as King Tut.
Oh, King Tut.
He's famous not for his deeds,
But for his incredibly well-preserved tomb,
right,
which was discovered in 1922 almost intact.
King Tut, the accidental celebrity. It was like winning the archaeological lottery. what made his tomb so special.
It wasn't just the golden treasures, though. Those were pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
It was the fact that his tomb was virtually untouched by grave robbers, giving us an unprecedented glimpse into the burial practices, the artistry, and the beliefs of this period.
It's like a time capsule, perfectly preserved for thousands of years. Amazing. And last but not least, we have Ramses II.
Ramses II was the epitome of a larger-than-life pharaoh.
Okay.
He had a long reign, was known for his military victories and ambitious building projects, and he definitely had a flair for the dramatic product. He's the one who built those iconic temples at Abu Simbel, which were moved in the 1960s to save them from rising waters caused by the Aswan Dam.
So Ramses II, the builder king, the warrior pharaoh, the guy who wanted to leave his mark on history and definitely succeeded. But even the most powerful empires eventually faced decline. What happened to bring about the fall of this mighty civilization? Well, after the peak of the New Kingdom, things start to unravel.
Okay.
Internal power struggles, economic challenges, and external pressures from invaders all contribute to a gradual decline.
Right.
This era, known as the Third Intermediate Period, is marked by instability and fragmentation. It's a reminder that civilizations, like all living things, have a life cycle.
Yeah.
They rise, they flourish, and eventually they decline.
It's a bittersweet realization, but it's part of the natural order of things. So
Yeah.
what eventually happened to ancient Egypt? Did it just fade away?
Not quite. It continued to exist, but under the control of foreign powers.
Okay.
Eventually, in 30 BCE, Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire, marking the end of the pharaoh's reign.
What a journey through time. From those small farming villages to a mighty empire and eventually becoming part of the Roman world, it really shows how history is this constant ebb and flow of power and influence.
Exactly. And it reminds us that nothing stays the same forever.
Right.
But even though ancient Egypt as a political entity ceased to exist, its legacy lived on. Its art, architecture, and ideas continued to inspire and influence other cultures.
It's like they planted seeds that continued to grow long after the civilization itself had faded. But I'm curious, what was life actually like for the average Egyptian? We've talked about pharaohs and pyramids, but what about the everyday people?
That's a great question. Let's shift gears for a moment and step into the shoes of an ordinary Egyptian.
I'm ready to take a walk through ancient streets, smell the aromas of their food, and hear the sounds of their daily lives. Let's go. Okay, so we've covered, like the grand sweep of ancient Egyptian history.
Yeah.
The rise and fall of dynasties, the monumental achievements, the political dramas.
Right.
But what about the everyday Egyptians?
Yeah.
The people who lived through these times, what was their life actually like?
It's easy to get caught up in the grandeur of the pharaohs and pyramids.
Right.
But the real heart of any civilization is its people.
Yeah.
So let's imagine we're walking down a bustling street in ancient Thebes or Memphis.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I can almost hear the market vendors hawking their wares, smell the spices, see the colorful fabric.
Exactly. Now remember,
Yeah.
ancient Egyptian society was very structured, hierarchical.
Huh?
Think of it like a pyramid with the pharaoh at the top.
Right.
The elite priests, officials, nobles below him,
Okay.
and then descending layers of artisans, scribes, merchants, and finally, at the base, the farmers who made up the majority of the population.
So not a lot of social mobility if you weren't born into the right family.
Not really, but each level played a vital role in keeping society functioning.
Okay.
The scribes, for example, were highly respected because they could read and write.
Right.
Literacy was a powerful tool in a world where most people couldn't read hieroglyphs.
So knowing how to read and write was like having a superpower back then. It opened doors to opportunities that were unavailable to most people.
Exactly. Scribes were the record keepers, the administrators, the communicators. They were essential to the government, the temples, and even businesses.
Wow.
Then you had the artisans, incredibly skilled craftspeople who created everything from beautiful pottery and jewelry to furniture tools and even weapons.
So there was a real appreciation for craftsmanship and artistry in their society.
Absolutely. Egyptian art and craftsmanship were renowned throughout the ancient world.
Yeah.
And of course, let's not forget the farmers.
Right.
The backbone of the economy.
Right.
Their lives were tied to the rhythm of the Nile, planting and harvesting crops like wheat and barley, raising livestock.
It's amazing how the Nile permeated every aspect of their lives, from their spiritual beliefs to their daily work.
It was the lifeblood of their civilization, speaking of beliefs.
Okay.
We can't talk about the ancient Egyptians without delving into their religious world.
Yeah.
Their belief system, with its many gods and goddesses, was woven into the fabric of their daily existence.
It wasn't just about going to temple on a certain day.
Right.
It was about seeing the divine in nature, in the cycle of life and death, in the very act of breathing.
Exactly. And the afterlife was central to their beliefs. They believed that death was not the end, but a transition to another realm.
Yeah.
This belief fueled their elaborate burial practices, the mummification process, the construction of grand tombs filled with treasures and provisions for the afterlife.
So it wasn't just about preserving the body. It was about equipping the soul for its journey into the next world that explains those elaborate tombs and all the treasures buried with the deceased.
Exactly. They were preparing for a whole new life.
Right.
And they wanted to do it in style.
Like courts.
But remember, the Egyptians weren't just focused on the afterlife.
Right.
They were also incredibly innovative in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and engineering.
Their medical knowledge was surprisingly advanced.
Yes. Their medical papyri reveal a detailed understanding of anatomy, surgery, and even dentistry.
Wow.
They developed effective treatments for a wide range of ailments using a combination of natural remedies and surgical procedures. And don't forget their mastery of mathematics and astronomy, which is evident in their monumental architecture, their precise calendars, and their ability to navigate by the stars.
It's truly mind-boggling what they accomplished with the tools and knowledge they had. So, what can we learn from the ancient Egyptians? Why do you think their civilization continues to capture our imaginations today, thousands of years later?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think it's because they offer us a glimpse into a world so different from our own, yet with echoes of our own human experience. Their search for meaning, their connection to nature, their fascination with the cosmos, their triumphs and failures.
Yeah.
These are all themes that resonate with us today.
It's like looking into a mirror across time, seeing both the differences and the similarities
Yeah.
and their achievements. Those pyramids, temples, and works of art
Right.
stand as testaments to human ingenuity and creativity.
Exactly. They remind us of what we're capable of when we combine vision, skill, and determination.
Yeah.
Their civilization may be ancient, but their legacy is timeless.
This deep dive has certainly opened my eyes to the wonders of ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
I'm feeling inspired to learn more, to explore their mythology, their art, their wisdom.
And that's the beauty of history. It's a journey of discovery that never ends.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn, something to marvel at, something to connect with. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that sense of wonder alive.
Well said. And for our listeners, if you're feeling as inspired as I am, there's a wealth of resources out there, books, documentaries, museums. Keep diving deep into the fascinating world of ancient Egypt.